He told me he was divorcing me over the phone, and that he'd already sold our apartment to start a new life with his girlfriend. That was the moment everything inside me went still. But on the outside, I was eerily calm. Almost cold, if I'm honest. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there, phone pressed against my ear, listening to Derek's careless words spill out like they were nothing, like I was nothing. I remember the soft hum of the refrigerator in the background, the late spring sunlight filtering through the sheer curtains of our living room, the smell of Derek's cheap cologne still lingering faintly in the air from when he left that morning, and me sitting quietly on the worn-out couch, heart pounding in a way I couldn't quite place, but face calm as if it belonged to someone else entirely. I told him, "You can't sell something that isn't yours." He laughed, a bitter, short sound. "You signed off on everything. You're not exactly the one in control here, Audrey." That's when I knew he had no idea what he just stepped into. Before I explain what happened next, let me take you back a little, to when life still felt normal. For years, Derek and I lived what most people would call a comfortable life. Our apartment was modest but cozy, nestled in a quiet part of the city, with a kind of neighborly warmth that felt like a balm at the end of long days. Mornings were my favorite, the faint clinking of Derek's coffee cup in the kitchen, the scent of cinnamon toast drifting through the air, and his voice softly humming some tune I couldn't quite catch. He was never a man of many words, but in those moments, there was peace. We were married for 10 years. No kids, just the two of us and our routine's work, weekends at the park, dinner dates, and the quiet comfort of shared silence. Our relationship wasn't perfect. We had arguments, the kind every couple does, but beneath it all, I thought there was trust. Derek worked in real estate, ironic, in hindsight. He had a way with numbers and negotiations, and for years, I admired his confidence. I was a graphic designer, working from home, carving out my own space in the world in a quieter way. Our lives complemented each other. Or so I thought. When Derek first mentioned refinancing the apartment months ago, I trusted him without question. He told me it was routine, nothing to worry about, and I signed the papers. He asked me to papers that would, unknowingly to him, put the apartment's deeds solely in my name. He was careless, distracted, and I was cautious. I insisted on having my lawyer look over everything, something Derek teased me about. But I didn't care. I wasn't about to lose what was mine. But as the days grew shorter and the evenings colder, something shifted. Derek became distant, like a ghost haunting our shared space, but no longer fully present. His smiles were fewer. His eyes avoided mine. And phone calls became secretive whispers away from my earshot. One evening, I found a receipt for a restaurant I didn't recognize, tucked between the pages of his book. It was dated the day before, and it wasn't our usual spot. That night, I caught the faint scent of perfume, not mine, lingering on his jacket. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was overthinking, but that nagging feeling wouldn't leave me. It settled like a storm cloud in my chest, dark and suffocating. One Saturday afternoon, I confronted him gently, asking about the strange receipt, the perfume, the late nights at work. He smiled, that same distant smile, and said, "Audrey, you worry too much. Work's been hectic, that's all." But I could see the flicker of guilt, the hesitation in his voice. I tried to hold on to hope, to the version of Derek I loved. But deep down, I knew something was broken. And it wasn't just in our marriage, it was in the very foundation of our life together. And then came the call. The moment Derek told me he'd sold our apartment and was leaving me for Jessica, his girlfriend, I felt a strange calm wash over me. Not because I wasn't hurt. Oh, I was, but because I had a secret he didn't know. The apartment was legally mine. I had taken every precaution months before, quietly ensuring that, with the help of my lawyer Claire, fierce woman with a sharp mind and unwavering loyalty, I began to unravel Derek's deceit. But I won't rush ahead. The truth's power lies in its slow revelation. After the call, I sat on that same worn-out couch, the phone still warm in my hand, the hum of the refrigerator now louder, almost accusatory. My mind raced, but my body stayed still. I didn't want to cry. I didn't want to scream. Instead, I reached for my laptop and opened the files I'd kept locked away, a safeguard no one else knew about. Months earlier, when Derek was distracted by work and I sensed his attention slipping away, I had quietly initiated a refinance on our apartment. I insisted on putting the deeds solely in my name. It wasn't about distrust then, at least. Not yet. It was about control. A way to secure my own footing in an uncertain world. Now, it was my lifeline. I sent an email to Claire, my lawyer. Claire had been my rock during a difficult custody battle years ago for a friend, and her sharp instincts and calm demeanor had earned my trust. Within the hour, she replied, "Let's meet tomorrow morning. Bring everything." That night, I barely slept. The apartment that held so many memories, the laughter, the arguments, the quiet mornings had suddenly become a battlefield. The next morning, Claire arrived with a folder of documents and a quiet confidence. She reviewed the papers I had gathered. The refinance documents, the deed, Derek's signed paperwork. She nodded thoughtfully. "This sale is fraudulent," Claire said, voice steady but firm. "The deed belongs to you. Derek had no legal right to sell the apartment without your consent." I felt a spark of hope. Claire continued. "We'll file to void the sale immediately. Jessica's name won't appear on any legal documents, so she technically has no claim here." "Do you think they'll come to the apartment?" I asked, heart pounding. "Possibly," Claire said. "And when they do, they'll learn the truth." That afternoon, as if on cue, Derek showed up at the apartment, hand in hand with Jessica. They looked confident, smug, even two people convinced they had won. I was waiting inside. The door clicked shut behind them as they stepped in, and I watched Derek's face fall when he saw me standing there calmly. "Audrey," he said, voice dripping with forced politeness. "What are you doing here? This isn't your place anymore." I smiled, a slow, controlled smile that held more power than any shout. "It's my place, Derek. The deed's in my name. The sale? Invalid." Jessica's face drained of color. She looked from Derek to me, confusion and betrayal swirling in her eyes. "Wait, what?" she whispered. Derek sputtered, searching for words, but found none that could save him. Jessica turned sharply and fled the apartment, leaving Derek standing there alone, his world unraveling. That moment watching Jessica walk away was strangely freeing. It was like the air shifted. The weight of years of betrayal lifted just enough to let me breathe again. Derek's downfall wasn't just personal, it was public. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. Whispers of his lies and the fraudulent sale. People who once admired him now looked at him with quiet judgment. He was forced to move out within days, his reputation in tatters. In the weeks that followed, Claire and I finalized the divorce. Derek tried to fight it, but the truth was undeniable. I took back my home, my sanctuary. The apartment was more than walls and furniture. It was a symbol of resilience, a testament to the strength I found within myself amid betrayal. After Derek moved out, the apartment felt different, lighter, somehow. The heavy silence that had settled between us for months began to lift, replaced by an odd sense of peace. It was mine again, truly mine, and I was determined to rebuild not just the space, but the parts of myself he tried to break. But healing wasn't instantaneous. Some mornings, I woke up to the echo of his footsteps that weren't there anymore. Sometimes, I'd catch myself reaching for the phone, half expecting a message, a call, a sign that maybe, just maybe, he'd come back and explain. But I knew deep down, there would be no explanations that could mend the fractures. Claire was right beside me through it all, my calm in the storm. Over cups of lukewarm coffee and late-night phone calls, she reminded me that strength wasn't about never falling. It was about getting up when the world expected you to stay down. One afternoon, I sat by the window watching the city bustle below. The faint scent of rain hung in the air, mixing with the aroma of fresh lavender from the vase Derek used to gift me on anniversaries. I touched the petals gently, feeling both the memories and the wounds they carried. It struck me then, this wasn't just about a man who lied, or a house that was almost stolen. It was about reclaiming my narrative, rebuilding trust in myself. Derek tried to reach out a few times after the divorce papers were signed. His messages were awkward, sometimes pleading, sometimes angry, but I didn't respond. The chapter had closed. Jessica? She disappeared from our lives entirely. Later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd moved out of town. I never wished her ill. Her leaving was a silent acknowledgement of the pain Derek caused her too. It was strange, though, how a stranger could come into your life and unravel so much. But in the wreckage, I found clarity. Friends and family rallied around me quietly, respecting the boundaries I set. My sister Marie brought over homemade soup one evening, sitting with me without saying much, just offering company. My best friend Lila listened patiently to my long, scattered thoughts as I poured out the tangled mess of emotions. Life moved slowly, like a river finding its course after a storm. I started focusing on my work again, designing with renewed passion. I painted the walls a soft cream, bringing light into the apartment. I planted herbs on the balcony, small green signs of growth and healing. One evening, sitting in the quiet glow of a single lamp, I journaled the words that had taken root inside me. Sometimes, the greatest betrayal is also the greatest lesson. It teaches you what and who you truly are. It teaches you the courage to stand alone, to rebuild, to rise. That night, as the city lights flickered outside my window, I felt a profound sense of freedom, not just from Derek, but from the fear and doubt that had held me captive. It was about 3 weeks after Derek moved out, when the neighborhood started to murmur louder. Not just whispers behind closed doors, but the kind of quiet judgment that settles like dust and refuses to be ignored. I'd seen Derek at the local coffee shop once or twice. His posture slumped, the usual confident gleam in his eyes replaced by something tired and worn. People would glance at him, then at me, like the story of the apartment sale, and his betrayal was written across my face. One afternoon, I bumped into Mrs. Carter, our elderly neighbor from down the hall. She was holding a basket of freshly baked cookies, her eyes soft but knowing. "I heard about everything, dear," she said gently, handing me a cookie. "You handled it with such grace. Not many would." Her words wrapped around me like a warm blanket. I smiled, taking the cookie carefully. "I just did what I had to do," I replied quietly, for myself. The truth coming out changed more than just my life. Derek's reputation in our circle fractured irreparably. People who once called him a friend now avoided eye contact. His business partners questioned his integrity. It was a slow unraveling, but one that echoed the betrayal he'd tried to mask with lies. Jessica, caught in the crossfire of his deception, left him when she realized just how deep the lies ran. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that she had confronted him, disbelief and hurt sharp in her voice. "I didn't know any of this," she reportedly said, her words heavy with betrayal. That moment, even though I never met her again, felt like a small victory, a reckoning for Derek's dishonesty. Claire and I worked through the final legal hurdles quietly. Derek fought tooth and nail, dragging the process out longer than I expected. But the law was clear, and my evidence irrefutable. The day the divorce was finalized, I stood in the courtroom, the weight of years pressing down on me. When the judge pronounced the decree, a quiet relief washed over me. I was free. That freedom wasn't just legal, it was emotional. It was waking up without the shadow of doubt clouding my mornings. It was walking through the apartment, now truly mine, with a sense of ownership that went beyond the physical space. I remember standing by the window that evening, the golden light of sunset spilling into the room, the soft scent of jasmine from the balcony. The world outside was vast and full of possibility. I whispered to myself, "This is just the beginning." In the weeks after the divorce, I found myself slowly piecing together the fragments of a life Derek had shattered and making something new from the shards. It wasn't easy. Some days the silence felt heavier than the arguments ever were. The apartment, once full of shared memories, now echoed with my solitary footsteps. But within that quiet, I discovered a strength I hadn't known I possessed. One morning, I woke early to the soft patter of rain against the window. The apartment smelled of damp earth and fresh coffee brewing in the kitchen. I moved deliberately, making a list of things to do. Repaint the bedroom, finally organize the bookshelves, and call Claire to thank her again. Small acts, but each one a stitch in the fabric of my healing. I called my sister Marie, and we planned a weekend getaway. "You need a break," she said, her voice warm and insistent. "Time away from all this. Time to breathe." I agreed, though I was nervous about stepping outside my new comfort zone. But the thought of fresh air, new faces, and a break from the apartment felt like a balm. That weekend, we drove to the coast. The salty breeze tangled in my hair, and the sound of waves crashing against the shore was both wild and soothing. Maria and I walked along the beach, the sand cool beneath our feet. We talked about everything and nothing, old family stories, silly childhood memories, hopes for the future. For the first time in months, I laughed freely. The weight of betrayal felt a little less suffocating. That night, under a sky filled with stars, I realized something important. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to live with the pain and choosing to move forward anyway. Back home, I started volunteering at a local women's shelter. Helping others who had faced their own battles reminded me that I wasn't alone. Their stories, their courage, gave me strength. We shared tears, laughter, and quiet moments of understanding. One woman named Clara told me, "It's not the broken pieces that define us. It's how we choose to put them back together." Those words echoed in my mind, becoming a mantra. Derek, meanwhile, was a ghost in my life, out of sight, but not entirely out of mind. Sometimes, I wondered what had driven him to such desperation. Fear? Greed? Or simply a man lost in his own lies? I didn't hate him. I pitied him, because while he lost a home, a wife, and respect, I gained something far greater, the courage to stand on my own. The days rolled on, and the ripples of Derek's betrayal reached far beyond the walls of our apartment. I began to notice subtle shifts in how people treated me, some with sympathy, others with a newfound respect. It was as if surviving the storm had transformed me in their eyes. From the quiet, unassuming wife to a woman who could no longer be underestimated. One afternoon, while picking up groceries, I ran into Mark, a neighbor who had always been friendly but distant. His face was serious, his voice low. "I heard about everything, Audrey," he said carefully. I just wanted to say, you're handling this with more strength than anyone could expect. I smiled, touched by the kindness. Thank you, Mark. It hasn't been easy, but I'm getting there. These moments reminded me that betrayal, while deeply personal, is also a shared human experience. People see your pain, yes, but they also see your resilience. Derek's business began to suffer. The news of his deception in selling the apartment spread quietly through his professional circles. Contracts were lost, and partners distanced themselves. It was a natural consequence of the man he had chosen to be dishonest, reckless, and careless of the lives he affected. I never wished for his downfall. Justice, I realized, was not about revenge, it was about truth and accountability. One day, Claire called with news that surprised me. Derek's legal troubles might not be over, she said cautiously. There are questions about other financial discrepancies, things he didn't disclose during the divorce. It was a bittersweet moment. Part of me wanted to close the book completely, but part of me knew that holding him accountable was necessary for me, and for anyone else he might hurt in the future. I chose to let the law take its course, knowing that real power lies in walking away with your dignity intact. The apartment became a sanctuary again, filled with light, laughter, and the smell of fresh bread from the bakery down the street. I hosted small dinners for friends, played music softly in the background, and allowed myself to dream again. The betrayal had taken so much from me, but it had not taken my spirit. The months following the divorce were not without their challenges, but each day I found myself growing stronger, more grounded in who I was without Derek. I discovered a rhythm in my solitude, a peacefulness that had been absent for years. One chilly autumn evening, I sat on the balcony wrapped in a soft blanket, the scent of burning wood from a neighbor's fireplace mingling with the crisp air. The city below buzzed with life, but up here, there was quite a space for reflection. I thought about everything I had lost and gained. The betrayal had cut deep, yes, but it had also forced me to look inward, to confront fears I'd been ignoring. I learned that sometimes, the most painful endings make room for the most profound beginnings. I started writing again, not just for work, but personal journals filled with raw emotions, hopes, and lessons learned. Writing became my therapy, a way to reclaim my voice. My friends noticed the change too. Lila hugged me one afternoon and said, "Audrey, you're shining in a way you never did before. It's like you've reclaimed your own light." I smiled, feeling the truth in her words. The woman I was becoming was someone I wanted to know, strong, wise, and fiercely independent. One day, I visited Claire to thank her once more. We sat across from each other, the late afternoon sun streaming through the office window. "I couldn't have done this without you," I admitted softly. Claire reached out, squeezing my hand. "You had the strength all along, Audrey. I just helped you see it." Her words stayed with me long after I left. There were moments of forgiveness too, not for Derek, but for myself. Forgiveness for trusting, for loving, for believing in something that turned out to be false. I learned that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's a gift you give yourself to heal. As the year drew to a close, I stood by the window again, watching the snow begin to fall, blanketing the city in white. I felt a quiet gratitude for the lessons, for the pain, and most of all, for the resilience I had found within. This was more than survival. It was rebirth. As I sit here now, looking out at the gentle snowfall covering the city, I'm reminded that life, like the seasons, is always changing. Sometimes the cold comes harsh and unexpected, leaving us feeling stripped bare. But just like the snow melts and gives way to spring, so too can our hearts find warmth and new beginnings after the coldest betrayals. What Derek did to me was devastating. He tore apart the life we built together and tried to steal the home I loved. But through that pain, I discovered something far more valuable than property or titles. I discovered my own strength, my own voice. It's a quiet kind of power that doesn't shout or rage, but steadies you like the earth beneath your feet. I share this story not for sympathy or judgment, but because I know betrayal doesn't discriminate. It can happen to anyone, and when it does, it shakes the very foundation of who we are. But it's also in those moments when trust shatters that we get to decide what comes next. Will we crumble, or will we rise? I chose to rise, and you can, too. Would you have handled things differently? Would you have found the courage to fight back quietly, like I did? Or would you have taken another path? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories and support each other through whatever battles life throws our way. If this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing for more stories of resilience, truth, and healing. Remember, no matter how dark the night, the dawn always comes. Thank you for listening.